Hello everyone and welcome back to Car and Bike. I'm Bilal and this is the Tata Curvv EV. Now we first drove the Tata Curvv EV last year in August as the major drive, and this is the first time we're driving it afterwards. Now back then the Curvv EV marked Tata's entry into the lucrative C-SUV segment, and this one, the EV, it arrived before the ICE derivative. But now the competition has gotten fierce because the segment leader Hyundai Tata, it is also available with a EV derivative. Moreover, there are a couple of Mahindras out there who are making some news. But before we bring both of them, the Mahindra EVs and the Hyundai Creta EV head-to-head with the Curvv EV, we thought it's a good time to reflect and take some time out with the Curvv EV and discuss three things that we really liked about it and three things that could have been better. But before we go ahead in this 3 reasons video of the Tata Curvv EV, here's a reminder to like, share and subscribe to the Car and Bike YouTube channel if you haven't already, and hit that bell icon as well so that you can be notified every time we bring out a new informative video such as this. But before we go ahead, I request you to stick around as we have driven this Curvv EV for a proper real-world range test. We have driven it from 100% to not exactly 0%, but 5%, and we will be telling you its real-world range. So stick around. Okay. Now we begin with the first reason, and I have to admit that Tata took their sweet time to enter the toughly fought and very lucrative C-SUV segment. And admittedly, again, they could not have done it better than the Curvv, and more specifically this Curvv EV. Now this segment, it has 7 well-established rivals already. And when you enter a space which is highly crowded, you need something unique to grab their attention right off the bat. And the Curvv EV, it does that with its unique coupe SUV body style. But it's not just about the styling. The Curvv nameplate brings you a complete product. You have multiple powertrain choices, as I mentioned before. You have the petrol, the diesel and the EV. And this EV, it's backed by years of expertise and benchmarking done by the EV division under Tata. And the quality of materials used inside the cabin, it feels luxurious and premium. The boot is large, if not cavernous, and despite being a coupe SUV, we will come around to the second row space in a bit, but this one, on the outside, it also looks handsome. And this one is also feature loaded. And that brings us to the second positive of the Curvv EV and the fact that it is quite feature loaded. Now we're talking about the range topping version over here, but it has everything that you will ever need from your car and some more. Now we begin with this white touchscreen that's mounted on the dashboard, and I would go a step ahead and say that it is one of the best in the segment. Yeah, a bold claim, but I still stand by it. But lower down you have this phygital control panel. I am personally not a fan of this phygital panel, but what's your opinion about it? Do let us know in the comment section below. Now we have done a separate video talking about the features, the variants, their pricing and everything that you need to know about the variant-wise feature distribution of the Curvv EV. You should go ahead and check out that video on our channel. You can find a link to it somewhere on your screen or in the description down below. The range topping trim aside, right from the base variant, the Curvv EV is a pretty well-loaded car when it comes to features, as I mentioned earlier. Nonetheless, if very fancy feature list doesn't fancy you, the accomplished trim makes for a great buy. First, you get a choice of battery packs, whichever suits your need, the 45 or the 55 kilowatt hour, and even if you choose the bigger battery pack with the additional sunroof, you still are under 20 lakh rupee mark, which makes it a very good value for money. The range-topping Empower trim that you see here in the pictures, it does get you many feel-good features, but it has a premium of couple of lakh rupees. Which one would you buy, or which one do you think is a more value for money version? Do let us know your opinion in the comment section below. Now the Curvv EV has a few aces up its sleeves when it comes to driving dynamics. First up, it has got a great ride quality, which alone is the reason enough to get yourself this over any other electric SUV out there. In fact, one personal experience I want to share with you is when I was range testing it, I was driving it on one of the flyovers carrying a good highway speed. But this flyover right on top had no roads, just craters and craters that would shame the surface of the moon. But the Curvv EV just plodded over it, and all I could hear was once, just once, the suspension flexing. And that's all. It crossed over unfazed. And then there's the output of close to 170 horsepower and over 200 Newton meter that allows a 0 to 100 km per hour time of just around 8 seconds, and that's quick by any standard, leave alone the C-SUV segment. But overall, the driving dynamics are well sorted. It's comfortable for everyday use, not intimidating to newer drivers, and delivers a good punch no matter what speeds you're doing. And finally, we come to the part that you have been waiting for, the real world range of the Curvv EV. And we drove this car from 100% to 5% before we had to put it on charge. And this one, it went, drum roll please. But wait, let me put some things in perspective first. Now the Nexon EV 45 kilowatt hour, the long range version, we did a similar range test for it, and it went close to 370 kilometers in a full charge. The standard Nexon, the discontinued 40.1 kilowatt hour, it used to do around 290 to 300 kilometers in a full charge, and that is good enough for most of the buyers, as the sales of the Nexon EV suggest. Now the Curvv EV 55 kilowatt hour that we have here, Tata claims a proper range of 502 kilometers. But they also claim that the C75 figure, that C75 is a figure that Tata says 75% of the EV buyers would be getting in the real world condition. Now the C75 figure of the Curvv EV 55 kilowatt hour is between 400 to 425 kilometers. Now when we tested this one, it went, again wait for it, 390 kilometers in full charge. Now this one we tested with a single person on board. The temperature was set to 23 with the fan speed on 3, and the regeneration mode was set to 1. That is a standard setting. The drive mode was set to city drive mode because again that's a standard setting. So the Curvv EV 55, it can do realistically around 400 kilometers in a full charge, and that should be good enough for most of the buyers. And that is not a bad figure actually at this price point. Well, until we test the Creta EV and the Born EV Mahindras for this similar range test. Now, after all the good things about the Curvv EV, let us turn our focus to a few things that should be improved to make this an even better product. And I would like to start by pointing out one silly mistake that went horribly wrong for the Curvv EV, or the Curvv in fact as a whole. Because you see, the Curvv EV concept, we first saw it in April of 2022. And ideally, we should have gotten the Curvv nameplate rolling out in a production form later that year. But that didn't happen. But what happened instead is Tata used the unique and rather very stylish design language that you see here on the Curvv EV on all the cars that they had in the lineup. First, the Nexon EV and the ICE version were followed by Harrier and Safari facelifts, and even the smaller Punch EV got a similar Russian doll styling that the Curvv should have preceded with. Sure, this is a good-looking design that looks Robocop and from the future, but it eventually made this rather very special-looking Curvv a lot less special when it finally turned up a year later, when everyone was very familiar with this design already. And for the second negative, we again come back to the cabin. Now, let me get in first. And the second negative is the cabin ergonomics. Now, up front, the entire cabin layout, first of all, it is very akin. Not exactly very akin, it is exactly the same as the one you get in the Nexon EV cabin. Now, it's a good thing for the Nexon EV owner, not so much for the Curvv EV, because you are actually paying a premium for this slightly bigger cabin or car. So the cabin layout is exactly the same, which also means that the shortcomings of the Nexon EV, it's carried over. Now this one, it claims to be a Born EV, but there is actually no benefit that is seen here that usually comes with a Born EV car. For example, there's no floating center console. You still have that very weird and very badly laid out center console where there's no cup holder, first of all, and the USB placement, it's pretty weird out front. Secondly, the space up front, it's not really great. More importantly, the seats, I still have a big complaint from this seats because they are not tall enough. The backrest height, it should have been taller, because when you're sitting for longer hours, there's no real support for you on your shoulder blade. This backrest, it's still very small. It was the same complaint I had with the Nexon EV. It is carried over in the Curvv EV as well. The seats could have been better actually. Then I come to the second row here, and as you saw while I got in, it's not a very graceful way to get in, because the space you have to ingress, it's very narrow. Secondly, the seats, it is placed at a very weird angle. The door, they do open all the way for 90 degrees, but once you get in, the space here, it feels very weird and cramped. Now the front seat, it's set to my driving position. It's not all the way back. Still, you can see there's not a lot of leg room for me over here. And this being an EV battery placed underneath, the legs, they are wedged quite up. That gives you a very awkward seating position. Secondly, it is a coupe SUV, as we know. Now for any coupe SUV, the trade-off has to be the second row headroom. Now this one, it isn't too bad, but I've seen some coupe SUVs so well executed that you still doesn't recognize on the inside that it is a coupe SUV. Not the case here. You have a panoramic sunroof, which could have been extended a little way back. Again, not the case. So the second row space, not very comfortable in the Curvv EV, despite paying more than what you pay for the Nexon EV. And the third reason to look elsewhere instead of this Curvv EV is the fact that it is actually an EV. And the EV charging infrastructure that we had thought in India would have developed by now, well, it's not exactly at that stage. So if you really want the Curvv EV, you should actually look elsewhere. The positive thing is you do get the Curvv badge with a petrol and diesel nameplate if you want the Curvv with all its merits, but don't want the EV powertrain. Apart from that, despite being a modern and less than a year old, the Curvv EV has some serious competition now. Firstly, the Mahindra pair, they both of which look and feel space age ahead. And the other competition comes in the form of the Creta EV, and there's also the Elevate EV that we are promised to arrive this year. So the Curvv EV's first mover advantage has been lost somewhere in this competition already. And thirdly, despite being a pretty solid, well packaged and well rounded off product like any other Tata product, there's still that unknown void where the reliability is still an issue, and the after sales service of the Tatas across the country, they will give you some reason to complain. So that's one reason to also stay away from the Curvv EV, because you again have a good established rivals in the CSUV segment that you can look at. There's also EV alternatives coming around, and that is overall the third reason to stay away from the Curvv EV. And that, ladies and gentlemen, are all the good things and not so good things about the Curvv.EV. Now, its design, it's a missed opportunity, yet it still looks good. It is a good entry into the CSUV segment from Tata, and it is available in both ICE as well as the EV derivative. So even if you have a shortcoming of the EV parameter, you can still go ahead with the ICE derivative. It also has a spacious boot space, very feature loaded on the inside, and it's not bad to drive either. The ride quality is something to write home about, and a realistic range of 400 kilometers is a decent figure if you really want a mid-size SUV for your daily commutes, for your office commutes, for dropping kids to school, and overall a second car in your family. More importantly, it is also well priced. So that's all from me about the Curvv EV in this video, all the positive and the negative. But more importantly, we'll be getting the Curvv EV back again on our channel for a proper head-to-head against the newly arrived Hyundai Creta EV. So if you have any questions regarding this head-to-head, you want to know something specific about both the Curvv EV and the Creta EV when we have both of them together, do write down your opinion or comments or any of your questions in the comments below, and I promise we will definitely address them all. And that's all from me in this video. This is Bilal signing off. Until next time.